The voice message from my own daughter wasn't meant for me, but the 3 minutes of cold, calculated planning I accidentally heard shattered my world and revealed a monster wearing my child's face. My name is Eleanor. For 66 years, I believed in the sanctity of a mother's love. I believed the sacrifices I made, the back-breaking work, the sleepless nights, the quiet desperation of poverty, would be repaid not in money, but in loyalty. I was wrong. The universe delivered its brutal verdict via a misplaced audio file, and in that moment the woman I was died, replaced by someone colder, sharper, and determined to survive. The phone trembled in my hand, my daughter Clara's voice slicing through the quiet of my kitchen with a venom I didn't recognize. "Mark, I can't do this anymore. Having my mother under this roof is suffocating." Each word was a shard of ice piercing my heart. This was the child I had carried, nurtured, and loved with a ferocity that defied reason. She's a burden, Mark, a constant meddling presence, and the cost, we're bleeding money just supporting her. A bitter laugh, hollow and cruel. I found a solution, a retirement home on the outskirts. It's only $800 a month. Think of what we could do with that savings. We could finally renovate this kitchen. I sank to the cold tile floor, the strength gone from my legs. $800. The exact amount I gave them each month from my pension to help with their expenses. My generosity was being used as the very reason to discard me. But the financial insult was just the prelude. The true devastation was yet to come. Stick with me, because what you'll hear next reveals a depth of betrayal that will leave you breathless. The audio continued, Clara's voice dropping into a conspiratorial whisper. I've been through all the house documents with Lydia. Lydia, her cousin, who worked at the county clerk's office. A viper I'd welcomed into my home. The house is in her name, but Lydia showed me how to transfer it to ours without her ever knowing. A few hundred in fees and it's done. My home. The walls I painted myself, the garden I tended for 3 decades, the floorboards that creased with the memory of my daughter's footsteps. This wasn't just a house, it was the living scrapbook of my life, the only asset I had after a lifetime of labor, and my own flesh and blood was plotting to steal it. Then came the coup de grace. The detail that revealed this was not a desperate plan, but a meticulously orchestrated coup. I've already spoken to the director at Silver Haven, Clara said, her tone clinical, as if discussing a business transaction. I told him Mom has early-stage dementia, that she's a danger to herself. He was very understanding, said they see this all the time. I've signed the preliminary admission papers. Dementia. They were building a case, fabricating a narrative of incompetence to legally strip me of my rights, my home, and my freedom. Mark's muffled voice chimed in with approval in the background. The son-in-law I'd welcomed, supported, and loved as my own, complicit in my destruction. The plan is perfect, Clara finished, and I could hear the smug smile in her voice. Next Tuesday, we tell her it's a routine doctor's appointment. We take her to Silver Haven, check her in, and by the time she realizes what's happening, we'll have legal guardianship. Lydia says with the medical reports we've acquired, it will be a formality. A final chilling laugh. In a month, Mom will be in the home and we'll own everything. We can finally have peace without that bitter old woman controlling our lives. The message ended. Silence descended thick and heavy. I sat on that floor for an hour, maybe 2, replaying the message until the words were seared into my soul. The bitter old woman. The woman who worked 12-hour days cleaning strangers' homes to put her through college. The woman who sold her own mother's jewelry to buy her textbooks. The woman who held her when her heart was broken. That night, I didn't sleep. I wandered through the rooms of my house, a ghost in my own life. I traced the faint pencil marks on the doorframe, charting Clara's growth from a toddler to a young woman. I looked at photos of us, my arms wrapped around her, both of us beaming with a love I now knew was a lie. The pain was a physical ache, a cavernous hollow in my chest where my heart used to be. Have you ever felt a love so profound that its betrayal feels like a physical death? That was my reality. But as dawn broke, something shifted inside me. The grief began to harden into something else, a cold, relentless determination. As the first rays of sun filtered through the kitchen window, I rose. The helpless old woman they thought I was had vanished. In her place stood a survivor. I went to my closet and took out my finest emerald green suit, the one I'd worn to Clara's graduation. I applied my makeup with a steady hand, styled my silver hair with purpose, and slipped on the simple pearl necklace my mother had left me, a tangible reminder of a woman who knew true strength. I gathered my important documents, the deed to my house, my birth certificate, bank statements, and the life insurance policy that had so tantalized my daughter. I placed them neatly into my leather satchel. Then I penned a simple note and left it on the kitchen table. Gone out on personal business. Back this afternoon. Eleanor. They deserved no more explanation than they had given me. With my head held high and a plan already crystallizing in my mind, I walked out of the house I had built and into the morning light. Clara and Mark were still asleep, dreaming of their ill-gotten future, completely unaware that their carefully laid plans were about to be obliterated by the very woman they had written off. My story is one of profound pain, but also of incredible resilience. If my journey resonates with you, if you've ever faced betrayal or are rooting for me to reclaim her power, please let me know in the comments below. Your engagement fuels these narratives. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next where my plan begins to unfold. The next move in this high-stakes game of family and survival is one you won't want to miss. The morning air was crisp, tasting of freedom and vengeance. I didn't look back at the house. That chapter was closed. My first stop wasn't born of panic, but of strategy. I needed to secure my financial borders before the enemy even knew the war had begun. The bank doors opened at 8 a.m. sharp. I walked in, my emerald suit a banner of my newfound resolve. Sarah, the branch manager who'd watched Clara grow up through our transactions, greeted me with a warm smile that didn't quite reach her worried eyes. "Eleanor, it's wonderful to see you. How can I help you today?" "Sarah," I said, my voice calm and level, "I need you to pull all transactions on my primary accounts for the last 6 months. I also need to know if anyone besides myself has accessed my financial information." Sarah's smile faltered. She typed quickly, her brow furrowing. "Eleanor, there are multiple access logs here from Clara. She presented a signed letter of authorization from you, dated 3 months ago, granting her full visibility to assist with your finances." My blood ran cold, but my exterior remained placid. "May I see that letter, please?" When she slid the paper across the desk, the forgery was obvious to me. The signature was a clumsy imitation, lacking the distinct flourish on the E I'd had since I was a girl. It was the first tangible evidence of their conspiracy. "This is a forgery, Sarah," I stated, placing my official ID next to it. "My daughter has been fraudulently monitoring my accounts. I want every single one of her authorizations revoked immediately. I want a security alert placed on my profile. And then I want to transfer every cent of my savings into a new private account that only I can access." As Sarah worked to secure my financial fortress, a chilling thought occurred to me. If they had this level of access, what else had they already set in motion? The answer lay with the snake in the grass. My niece, Lydia. My next stop was the county clerk's office. I found Lydia at her desk sipping coffee and looking utterly ordinary, a wolf in administrative assistant's clothing. A small voice recorder in my purse was already running. "Aunt Eleanor," she stammered, nearly spilling her coffee. "What a surprise. Is everything okay?" "Just doing some errands, dear," I said sweetly, taking the seat opposite her. "Clara mentioned you've been such a help with some paperwork for the house. I thought I'd stop by and see how it's all going." Her face paled. "Oh, it's nothing. Just some boring property tax stuff. You know how it is." "I do," I said, leaning forward, my voice dropping to a whisper. "But I'm curious, Lydia. What property tax forms require my signature and a notary? And why would you need to discuss my mental state with a doctor?" The color drained completely from her face. I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't you?" I pulled out my phone and played a 30-second clip of Clara's voice message, the part where she said Lydia's name. Her eyes widened in pure terror. "Eleanor, please," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Clara said you were confused. She said it was for your own good, that you couldn't manage on your own anymore." "Stop lying to me, Lydia," I said, my voice like steel. "It was for money, my house. Now you have a choice. You can help me undo every single fraudulent document you've created, or I walk straight to your supervisor and the district attorney with this recording. How long do you think you'll keep this job? How will you support your children then?" The dam broke. She confessed everything between ragged sobs, the forged transfer deeds, the fake medical evaluation requests she'd filed, the bribes she was prepared to pay to fast-track my declared incompetence. She printed copies of everything, her hands shaking so badly the papers rattled. I had my evidence. Holding those documents, I felt a seismic shift. This was no longer just about hurt feelings. This was a criminal conspiracy, and the perpetrators were my own family. The naive part of me that hoped for a misunderstanding died right there in that government office. My final stop that morning was the office of Mr. Alistair Finch, the most formidable estate attorney in the city. I didn't have an appointment. I simply walked in, placed the folder of evidence on his desk, and said, "My name is Eleanor Vance. My daughter and son-in-law are attempting to steal my home and have me declared insane. I need your help to destroy them, legally." He spent an hour reviewing the documents, the audio recording, and Lydia's signed confession. When he looked up, his eyes held a mix of professional outrage and personal admiration. "Mrs. Vance, this is one of the most egregious cases of elder fraud I've ever seen. The evidence is irrefutable. What is your desired outcome?" I looked him dead in the eye. "Justice, Mr. Finch. I want them to face the full consequences of their actions. I want my name cleared, and I want to ensure they can never, ever do this to me or anyone else again. We will file a civil suit for fraud, forgery, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. We will also be filing criminal complaints with the police. With this evidence, arrest warrants are a very real possibility." A cold serenity settled over me. "Then let's begin." By the time I returned home, the chessboard was set. Clara and Mark were in the living room, the picture of domestic bliss. "Mom, there you are," Clara said, that familiar fake concern plastered on her face. "We were getting worried. Your note was so vague." "I took care of everything that needed taking care of," I said calmly, hanging up my coat. "By the way, we're having some visitors tomorrow morning. I expect you both to be here." Mark frowned. "Visitors? Who, Mom?" I gave them a serene smile, the calm before the storm. "You'll see. They're here to help us clarify our family's future." I slept soundly. That night, for the first time in months, the trap was set, and they had walked right into it. I am sharing this story not for sympathy, but as a testament to all of you who have felt the sting of betrayal from those you trusted most. Know this: your pain is valid, and your right to fight back is sacred. The system can be navigated, and truth, when armed with evidence, is a powerful weapon. Please share them with me in the comments. Your support means the world. If you're invested in seeing this through, ensure you subscribe. The silence in my house was no longer empty. It was filled with the echoes of a shattered life. The police had taken their statements, the reporters had finally left, and the frantic energy of the crisis had subsided, leaving behind a cold, hard reality. I was a mother whose love had been weaponized against her, a woman who had nearly been carved open for profit. The knowledge was a sickness in my gut, a constant low-grade tremor that ran beneath the surface of every thought. I would find myself standing in the middle of a room, forgetting what I was doing, my mind replaying the moment Mario's small voice cut through the operating room's silence. That old woman. The phrase was a brand on my soul. Adam was moved to a different hospital under the care of a new team of doctors whose integrity was vetted and verified. The diagnosis was grim, but for the first time, it was honest. His kidneys were failing, not from a mysterious, tragic illness, but from a deliberate, calculated poisoning. The supplements Rebecca had forced on him were a toxic cocktail designed to mimic a rare autoimmune disease, creating the perfect clinical picture to necessitate a transplant. The dialysis he now began was not a stopgap, but the true start of his healing, a process of cleansing his body of the very person who had sworn to love him. I visited him every day. The guilt in his eyes was a heavier burden than his sickness had ever been. "I let her into our lives, Mom," he'd murmur, his gaze fixed on the white wall of his room. "I brought the wolf into the fold and gave her the key." There were no words to absolve him, so I simply held his hand, my presence a silent promise that he would not face this penance alone. Brandon became the fortress around what was left of our family. He moved into my house temporarily, his presence a solid, reliable bulwark against the lingering shock. He fixed things, the leaky faucet, the flickering light, the loose step on the porch. With every turn of his wrench and swing of his hammer, he was symbolically repairing the world she had broken. He rarely spoke of Rebecca, but his rage was a quiet, simmering force. I found him one evening in the backyard staring into the darkness, his fists clenched. "They used your love, Mom," he said, his voice thick. "They used the one thing they knew you would never withhold. There is no punishment great enough for that." I stood beside him, sharing his silence, understanding that some wounds were too deep for words. The legal proceedings began, a slow, grinding machine of justice that offered little comfort. The scope of the conspiracy was staggering. It wasn't just Rebecca and her parents. It was a network that included a disgraced pharmacologist and a corrupt hospital administrator. My consent form, my willing signature, was to have been the final, legitimizing piece of a multi-million-dollar international scheme. We learned they had done it before, on a smaller scale, with other, vulnerable patients. Adam was to be their masterpiece, the perfect case study to launch their black market drug. The police showed me evidence, financial records, encrypted messages, shipping manifests. Each document was another thread pulled from the tapestry of my former life, revealing the ugly, mechanical framework beneath. It was during this time that I truly saw the change in Mario. The brave little boy who had stormed the operating room retreated, replaced by a quiet, watchful child who started at loud noises and had nightmares. He stayed with me most nights, unable to face the empty, silent house where his mother had plotted his father's destruction. One night, I woke to the sound of his crying. I found him curled in a ball on the sofa, clutching the old cell phone. "I listened to it again, Grandma," he sobbed. "I wanted to see if I could hear if she ever loved us, but all I hear is the plan." I took the phone from his hands and held him, rocking him back and forth as I had when he was a baby. The weapon he had used to save us was now torturing him. I made a decision then. I took the phone outside, and with a hammer from Brandon's toolbox, I smashed it into a dozen pieces on the concrete step. I buried the fragments in the trash. Some truths are necessary to survive, but they don't need to be enshrined. Weeks turned into a month. The sharp edges of the trauma began to dull, sanded down by the monotonous routine of recovery. Adam's health stabilized. The dialysis was working, and a new treatment plan, one based on actual medicine, was showing promise. The ghost of color was returning to his cheeks. One afternoon, he looked at me from his hospital bed and said, "Brandon told me you wrote a will." I nodded, unable to speak. He reached for my hand, his grip surprisingly firm. "Tear it up, Mom," he said. "You're not going anywhere. We need you too much." It was the first time since this nightmare began that I heard a flicker of his old strength, the big brother who used to promise to build me a house. It was the first sign that the man she tried to destroy was still in there, fighting his way back. I began to clean my own house, not just the physical space, but the psychic remnants of Rebecca's presence. I boxed up the fancy teas she liked, the garish decorative vase her mother had given me, the expensive linens that had always felt alien in my simple home. With every item I packed away, I felt a little lighter. I was reclaiming my territory. I sat with Joe for hours, talking to him not as an invalid, but as my partner. I told him about my day, about Adam's progress, about Mario's small victories. And though he could not speak, his eyes were more present, his occasional squeeze of my hand more deliberate. We were communicating in a new language, forged in the fires of betrayal. The final piece of the unraveling came from an unexpected source, a letter from Rebecca's lawyer. It was not an apology, it was a request. She wanted to see Mario. She claimed she missed her son. The audacity of it stole my breath. It was the final stark reminder that the woman I had called daughter-in-law lived in a universe with a different moral physics. I discussed it with Brandon and painfully with Adam. The decision was unanimous. The answer was no. Some bridges once burned cannot and should not be rebuilt. To let her back in, even for a moment, would be to risk poisoning the new, fragile soil from which we were trying to grow. We had survived the unraveling. Now we had to begin the work of weaving something new from the tangled, broken threads she had left behind.
The silence after the bomb drops is its own unique kind of sound. It's not peaceful. It's a vacuum, sucking the air from your lungs and the warmth from your bones. For weeks, our house was a museum of that silence. Stephen moved through the rooms like a phantom, his footsteps echoing in the hollows Araceli's betrayal had carved out of him. He was an architect who had seen his life's blueprint revealed as a forgery, and he didn't know how to draw a new one. Matthew, my sweet, perceptive grandson, stopped asking for his mother. The questions died in his throat, replaced by a quiet vigilance. He would clutch my hand a little tighter, his sleep a little more fitful. The scar of that final dinner, of seeing two mothers and losing the one he knew, was still raw and pink on his young soul. I watched them, my heart a constant aching bruise. The revenge I had orchestrated felt hollow in the face of this devastation. I had exposed the lie, but the truth felt like a weapon that had blown back on us all. And then, like the first green shoot stubbornly pushing through scorched earth, Isadora returned. She didn't come with grand pronouncements or forced affection. She simply appeared the next day, holding a container of warm, homemade soup. She didn't try to fill the silence with empty words. She just moved quietly into the kitchen, heated the soup, and set a bowl in front of Stephen. "You need to eat," she said, her voice soft but firm. He didn't look at her, but after a long moment, he picked up the spoon. That small act was the first stitch in our torn family fabric. She came every day after that. She would play with Matthew on the floor, building block towers and drawing pictures of birds with big, strong wings. She didn't try to be Araceli. The difference was night and day. Where Araceli's care had been a performance, Isadora's was a quiet, steady offering. It was in the way she remembered Matthew hated the crust on his bread, the way she could make Stephen a cup of tea without him having to ask. I watched my son watching her. It started as mere observation, a flicker of curiosity in his deadened eyes. He saw the way Matthew would run to her, calling her Mom Isadora, a title born not of confusion, but of a child's pure recognition of love. He saw the way she cared for her own ailing parents with a bottomless well of patience. then came to our home and poured from that same well for us. One evening, I found Stephen in the doorway of the living room, watching Isadora read to Matthew. She was doing the voices, making him giggle, a sound we hadn't heard in what felt like a lifetime. "She's nothing like her," he whispered to me, his voice rough with emotion. "Her kindness, it's not a strategy, it's just who she is." "The world tried to make her a shadow," I replied, "but she chose to be her own light." That was the turning point. The ice around Stephen's heart began to crack. He started talking to her, first about mundane things, the weather, a news story, then slowly about his work, his fears for Matthew, the crushing weight of his failure. Isadora didn't offer empty platitudes. She listened. She validated his pain. She saw the man he was, not the failure Araceli had told him he was. Their love didn't bloom like a sudden explosion. It grew like a deep-rooted tree, slowly, strongly, anchored in the shared soil of hardship and truth. It was built on the rubble of a lie, and therefore its foundation was unshakable. The night he proposed was one of the most beautiful moments of my life. He was so nervous, his hands trembling as he knelt in the very living room where his world had ended months before. "Isadora," he said, his voice thick, "you walked into this broken family and didn't see the broken pieces. You saw the people who were left. You showed me I wasn't a drone building cages. You showed me I could build a home again, a real one, with you." He held out a simple, elegant ring. "Will you marry me? Will you be my wife and Matthew's mother, in law and in heart?" Her yes was a sob of joy, a sound of pure, unadulterated happiness that finally, completely, banished the last of the silence from our home. Their wedding was a testament to everything we had survived. We held it in the backyard, under the same Arizona sky that had witnessed so much of our pain. There were no extravagant decorations, just strings of fairy lights and the fragrant, resilient daisies from my garden. Matthew, now 8, stood as his father's best man, his chest puffed with pride, the shadows in his eyes finally replaced by a bright, secure joy. Ivan stood beside his brother, his pilot's uniform traded for a suit, his smile a beacon of familial solidarity. He had been the one to light the fuse, and now he was here to celebrate the beautiful new structure that had risen from the ashes. As I watched Stephen and Isadora exchange their vows, their hands clasped tightly, I didn't see a man replacing one wife with her twin. I saw a man finally marrying his equal, his partner, his truth. Isadora's radiance didn't come from a designer dress, but from the profound peace of being loved for exactly who she was. The reception was filled with a laughter that was light and free, unburdened by secrets. I saw Stephen pull Isadora into a dance, spinning her around as Matthew clung to their legs, laughing. It was a picture of a family, whole and complete. Later, as the stars came out, I sat on the porch, content to simply watch the joy I had helped fight for. Ivan joined me, handing me a glass of lemonade. "You did good, Mom," he said, his voice soft. I shook my head, looking through the window at my son, my new daughter-in-law, and my grandson. "No, Ivan, the truth did the hard work. We just had the courage to stop running from it. The revenge I had once craved had transformed. It wasn't about making Araceli pay anymore. It was about reclaiming what was ours, our right to happiness, to authenticity, to a love that doesn't require a stand-in. The greatest revenge was not their downfall, but our profound and lasting joy." Months melted into a new, peaceful normal. The ghost of Araceli no longer haunted our halls. Her name was rarely spoken, not out of bitterness, but because she had simply become irrelevant to the vibrant life we were living. Stephen flourished. Freed from the toxic narrative of his first marriage, his architectural firm landed its most ambitious project yet. He came home each day, not with the weight of the world on his shoulders, but with stories and excitement, eager to share them with Isadora and Matthew. And Matthew? My Matthew bloomed. The anxious, watchful little boy was gone, replaced by a confident, bubbly child whose world was secure. He thrived under the consistent, unwavering love of his mom, Isadora. She helped him with his homework, her handwriting, now consistently her own, a unique, lovely script that he adored. She sang him the same lullabies, but now they were a promise, not a performance. One evening, I was knitting in my armchair while Isadora prepared dinner. Stephen was at the table, sketching, while Matthew did his homework beside him. The scene was so mundane, so beautifully ordinary, and it filled me with a sense of completion so deep it was almost spiritual. Isadora brought Stephen a cup of tea, placing it beside him and leaning down to press a soft kiss to his forehead. He looked up at her, his eyes full of a love so deep and quiet it was a language of its own. In that moment, I understood the final, most important lesson. Betrayal is a fire. It can consume you, reduce you to ashes. Or, if you are brave enough to walk through it, it can forge you into something stronger, more resilient, and more appreciative of the light. We had been through the fire. We had lost everything we thought we had, and in losing it, we found everything we truly needed. The story you are witnessing is a testament to the fact that sometimes the most beautiful beginnings are disguised as painful endings. If this journey from the depths of deception to the heights of redemption has resonated with you, I need you to hear this. Your own truth, no matter how painful, holds the key to your freedom. Do not be afraid to face it. This story of a mother's fight is for everyone who has ever felt a whisper of doubt in their own home. If it has given you strength, let me know. Your subscription tells the algorithm that stories with heart and purpose matter. Share your thoughts in the comments. Where are you watching from, and what would you have done? And if you believe that honesty, no matter how painful, is the only path to real peace, let me know with a like. The final section, the conclusion of our journey, is coming next.